Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us today. Because today, we're taking a really fascinating and honestly, a kind of terrifying look at the extreme fragility of our modern food system. But don't worry, we aren't just going to sit here and dwell on the problem. We are going to explore the solution through the lens of ancient, virtually indestructible agricultural resilience. We're talking about crops that quite literally defied death to keep our ancestors alive.
Okay, let's dive right into this. 3. Just 3. That is a shockingly low number. But right now, as we speak, the entire world's food supply depends almost entirely on just 3 crops: wheat, rice, and corn. Think about that for a second. If a sweeping drought, an aggressive new plant disease, or a sudden climate shift takes out any of those 3, billions of people are suddenly left without food. It's a profoundly, deeply vulnerable position for humanity to be in.
But when we contrast this extremely fragile, hyper-specialized modern diet against human history, a wildly different picture emerges. I mean, our ancestors faced catastrophic droughts, relentless floods, entire societal collapses, and to survive all of that, they definitely didn't rely on a fragile 3-crop safety net. They utilized a massive arsenal of 20 highly resilient, almost indestructible plants.
We call these the apocalypse crops. Basically, these are plants that can survive and actually provide real sustenance when absolutely everything else goes belly up. They thrive in the most chaotic, extreme weather patterns. They grow in severely degraded soil, and in some wild cases, they can even survive for years while completely buried underground. They're literal biological marvels, and today, we're going to break down exactly how they do it.
All right, Section 1, Masters of Extreme Climates. Let's get to know the first group. Let's meet our first squad of resilient plants. Frankly, I'm completely in awe of these crops, mainly because they simply laugh at the most brutal climate conditions you could ever imagine. These 3 plants are biological anomalies. They just totally defy what modern agriculture says should be possible. Pearl millet, it's out there producing food in the blistering, unrelenting heat of the Thar Desert. Amaranth uses this highly efficient, water-saving thing called a C4 photosynthesis system to easily outcompete standard grains during massive droughts. And the jack bean, well, it's a wasteland warrior. It famously yields protein and fiber in rejected, eroded soils where literally nothing else stands a chance. To really put that into perspective, pearl millet doesn't just manage to survive, it actively thrives at temperatures above 104 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 40 degrees Celsius. In conditions where our modern delicate wheat and rice just shrivel up and die, pearl millet stands tall. And it's doing so while packed with fiber and minerals that act as a crucial buffer against metabolic diseases in marginalized, heat-stressed communities. It's a lifesaver. But climate isn't the only threat these crops have had to endure. Take amaranth, for example. Back in the 1500s, Spanish conquistadors realized just how vital this crop was to the Aztecs and Incas. So, what did they do? They banned it. They burned it to subjugate those cultures. But indigenous farmers quietly and secretly preserved it in these remote mountain pockets for centuries. Today, it is making a massive comeback. And it's beautiful, really, because amaranth's incredible biological resilience is perfectly mirrored by the historical resilience of the farmers who saved it from total erasure.
Which brings us to Section 2, the living granaries. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that we are moving from extreme weather survivors to plants that actually act as natural long-term food banks. Think about it. Modern food logistics require massive warehouses, constant refrigeration, right? These crops completely eliminate that need. Finger millet has seeds that are so dense, so hard, that pests like weevils can't even penetrate them. You can just store it in a bag for up to 10 years. Enset, which is this amazing Ethiopian plant, stores massive amounts of starch and water right inside its living trunk for years on end. And breadfruit? You can ferment it underground for decades. Decades. They offer this living, breathing guarantee against consecutive harvest failures.
And speaking of breadfruit, Pacific Island societies utilized an incredible zero-technology preservation method called ensilage burial. They obviously knew that devastating cyclones could wipe out an entire island's food supply in a matter of hours. So they'd mash the breadfruit pulp, pack it tightly into leaf-lined pits underground, and just let it ferment. This simple but brilliant process transformed the breadfruit tree from a regular crop into an ancestral insurance policy. You could dig it up and eat it literally years after the storms had passed.
And you guys, the real-world impact of these living granaries is staggering. Let me share a really powerful story to humanize this data. Prior to 1984, the southern Ethiopian highlands heavily cultivated enset, often called the tree against hunger. In 1984, a severe, terrible famine struck the country. The northern regions, which relied on standard cereal crops, saw their harvests fail completely, causing absolute devastation. But the southern communities? They survived. They literally just walked out to their fields and processed their standing inset trunks into food. It acted as this giant biological battery that saved millions of lives, all while the rest of the world just kind of looked away.
Moving right along to Section 3, Fast Responders and Soil Healers.
So, what if you don't have years to wait? What if disaster strikes right now? Well, this brings us to nature's emergency response team, especially crucial during the terrifying gap known as the hungry season. Take the fonio grain, for example. Step 1, you planted in extremely poor, sandy, totally nutrient-deprived soil. Step 2, you wait just 60 to 90 days. That is ridiculously fast. Step 3, you harvest a highly nutritious grain packed with rare amino acids like methionine. And this brilliantly illustrates how fonio's incredibly fast growth cycle perfectly, naturally closes that deadly window of starvation before the slower main-season crops are even ready to harvest.
Let's shift gears to the second half of this superpower and look at how this builds into actual soil healing. The Bambara groundnut and the lablab bean, they completely defy the modern agricultural requirement for expensive chemical fertilizers. Why? Because they fix their own nitrogen directly from the air. It's wild. If you plant them in exhausted, completely depleted soil, they provide complete nutrition to humans while actually leaving the earth better and far more fertile than they found it. It's a total win-win.
Next up is Section 4, Hidden in Plain Sight.
So far, we've seen crops that fight the weather and crops that heal the soil, but our next category operates in complete, stealthy secrecy. These are plants that save human lives precisely because they don't really look like human food. Most crops have a very tight harvest window, right? If you miss it, the food rots, plain and simple. But cassava roots have this stubborn ability to remain completely dormant, yet totally edible, underground for up to 3 years. This makes cassava the ultimate camouflage. Imagine a community is attacked and forced to flee a war zone. The raiding armies might burn all the fields above, but they can't burn what's hidden deep underground. When the people finally return, their food supply is right there waiting for them.
And we see this exact theme of hidden survival play out spectacularly in occupied France during World War II. The Nazi administration strictly rationed and requisitioned pretty much everything, all the wheat, the potatoes, the meat, but they completely ignored the Jerusalem artichoke. To them, and to most people actually, it was considered just a bumpy, wild, totally unimpressive weed. But because it wasn't on the official military rationing list, French civilians grew this weed everywhere. In their backyards, in random ditches. It required zero maintenance and quietly, secretly, fed an entirely occupied nation right under the very noses of their captors.
Finally, we reach Section 5, the ultimate sacrifice.
We've seen some absolutely incredible ingenuity so far today, but we also have to look at the darkest, most sobering reality of historical starvation. What happens when survival has a terrible cost? What happens when the choice isn't between eating well and eating poorly, but between eating something dangerous or dying? Consider the grass pea. Scientifically speaking, it is the most resilient pulse crop on Earth. It grows in severe droughts, it survives extreme floods, and it's densely packed with up to 28% protein. But here's the brutal biological trade-off. The grass pea contains a neurotoxin called ODAP. If it becomes your absolute only food source for more than 3 months, it attacks the spinal cord, causing permanent lower limb paralysis. So the crucial point is, it offers salvation and destruction simultaneously. And yet, knowing that, the grass pea was the literal last line of defense in some of the worst catastrophes in modern history. During the Spanish Civil War famine, the Bengal famine, the Ethiopian locust invasions, every other crop died. Only the grass pea survived. And the people who ate it, they were fully aware of the neurotoxic risks. It wasn't a secret. They were forced to make a conscious, highly rational calculation that losing the use of their legs was simply a better outcome than dying of starvation. Today I eat, tomorrow we figure out tomorrow. That single sentence strips away all of the abstract agricultural statistics and reveals the raw, unglamorous, and brutal reality of a famine. When a human being is sitting in a barren, dusty field holding a bowl of toxic food, they will choose life today, whatever the cost is tomorrow. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. Right now, humanity's putting all its chips on just 3 delicate crops. As our modern agriculture marches forward, aggressively pursuing higher yields in perfect controlled conditions, can we really afford to lose the brutal, life-saving knowledge of these 20 forgotten apocalypse crops?
Because if we completely abandon the resilient agricultural memory that kept our ancestors alive through their darkest hours, what on earth will we have left to rely on in ours? Thanks for watching.